Third down and 20.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the 3rd and 20 Dynasty Podcast. I'm JT, and as always, joined by Lounis and Frank. We are without Jake today. He's hiding, running from the grind. Once again, all his bad takes can't get exposed. We gotta wait another week. We are a week and change, a couple days from our first actual regular season game. That's the following Thursday. You'll probably be listening to this on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So next week is when we're going to have our big, kind of primer episode where we make bold takes and whatnot. Definitely a must listen to episode. It'll be stuff that you could hold us to accountable, but let's focus on now. Let's focus on the present. And we do have some bad news to start off with again. Another young running back goes down with an injury, and that's J.K. Dobbins tearing his ACL. I don't know if there's any other complications. They're looking into it, but J.K. Dobbins down. And I want to first start off by saying we're doing a 3rd and 20 Dynasty League. We're trying to set up a 3rd and 20 Dynasty League with viewers. We have a good chunk of people already. We just need a couple more people if you want to,
How many spots is it? Is it 2 or 3 more spots left?
There's like 2 spots left.
Left.
So if you want to reach out to Lounis, Frank, myself, the 3rd and 20 Twitter, however, or YouTube comments, however you want to reach out to us, first come, first serve, we'll make the league. And, J.K. Dobbins is someone I was looking forward to trying to draft in the startup. And bam, ACL injury. Now, it is weird with startups how, he's a running back that went down. If you're willing to do the productive struggle strategy, you can snag him much later.
That's actually going to be interesting to see where he goes now.
He's someone I'm interested in. I saw it going around on Twitter. There's the debate of, J.K. Dobbins, Cam Akers, Travis Etienne. Of those 3 running backs who were injured, 3 young running backs injuries, which one are you taking? And I think the easy answer is J.K. Dobbins, because we've seen it before. We've seen running backs come back from ACL injuries. Now, I'm not going to compare him to the superhuman that is Adrian Peterson, but Adrian Peterson was able to come back from an ACL injury and put up 2K yards. So it can be done. I'm very much least concerned about J.K. Dobbins. Obviously, it sucks this year. You're going to have to stash him on your IR. He's someone, though, that I just would not recommend selling. Are either of you guys saying a sell on J.K. Dobbins?
No, I'm holding him.
Frank?
No.
I'm holding him.
Yeah. So J.K. Dobbins is a firm hold. It just sucks. Maybe you're thinking about competing this year. If that's the case, I say you just kind of pack it in.
Here's the problem, though. It's not about if you're going to sell. It's who's buying Dobbins right now.
Yeah. Well, there's always people, rebuilding teams that are looking to score.
Yeah, they're willing to buy for a huge discount. If you're playing the value game, then you don't sell. Obviously, if you're looking to win a championship this year, maybe the next 2 years, and you say, hey, I would rather just move on to a back that's playing, yeah, sure, go ahead. You can justify it, but like you said, if it's a value play, I'll keep Dobbins and risk the injury.
Now, that brings us to, though, Gus Edwards. And what are we doing with Gus Edwards? Lounis, you have him in our home league.
Yeah.
You had him on the block. You picked him up last year for a third, maybe.
I think it was 2/3.
Yeah. So already immediately going up in value. What's the minimum price that you would take for Gus Edwards?
Okay, so my team that has Gus Edwards is contending this year. So the plan for me as a contender is probably to keep him. If I'm a rebuilding team, I'm 1,000% selling Gus Edwards to. I'm seeing what a contender is willing to offer. Because I think I'm with JT where once J.K. Dobbins comes back next year, this isn't going to be an injury that it's not like an Achilles or something. We've seen so many people come back from ACL tears and be better, if not just as good. And so it's back to Dobbins' backfield next year. So if I'm a rebuilding team, I'm definitely testing the market for Gus Edwards. If you don't find anything you like now, wait maybe for week 4 or something. I'm trying to think right now what I would have him at from a contender's point of view. I think somewhere in the second round. I'm just trying to figure out where in the second. Frank, if you were trying to buy him right now, what pick are you giving up at the highest?
A late second.
I'm thinking
around,
mid-second.
like if a contender-esque second. Because I sold Gus Edwards to you for 2/3. B, I have him in like 2 other leagues because I like Gus Edwards. Gus Edwards is the type of dude that you always knew if he was ever in an RB1 spot, he could be productive. I think the thing is, though, is that, and what people are forgetting is if you're in a half-point plus PPR league, it's not like he's going to be crazy good. I think he could definitely be good and have RB1 weeks, but of all these resurged running backs from backup role up into starting RB1 caliber spot, I think Gus Edwards is very safe. He's a great floor play, but I think that James Robinson and even Darrell Henderson, even though I don't think Darrell Henderson will be as good, both their ceilings are way higher than Gus Edwards, which is a little bit annoying to buy hhim at, right? Because I like Gus Edwards. I have him in 2 other leagues, right? I still don't want to go out and buy him.
Yeah.
I because here's the problem I have. If I am legitimately thinking, who would I rather have long-term, Gus Edwards or Gainwell, I might rather just have Gainwell for the upside, especially, and even more so in a PPR league. A standard league, fine. But if I'm PPR, yeah, Gus Edwards is going to be good for this year, but I don't think he's going to be as good as James Robinson this year. And then, the long term, okay, once JK's back, is Gus Edwards is going to be back to his glorified Latavius Murray role.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing with Gus Edwards. I'll let you go, JT, in a second to speak quick. That's the thing where I agree on. He's a pretty good rusher in terms of just when they give him carries, but he's never really showed like much receiving upside. So I agree with you at that point. He's definitely way better than standard. And JT, what were you going to say?
And I know the team said like, oh, we plan on rolling out with Gus Edwards as our main back. We're very confident in him, but it's always just coach speak. Like I'm not convinced that they're not going to go out and just get another running back. There's still a couple guys on the wire that at least if they got them, they'd hurt his value even to the point of like right now I was looking Gus Edwards about an early second on keep trade cut.
Damn.
You bring in just even like the tight legs of Duke Johnson Jr. and that already drops, significantly just because I think the public's kind of overreacting to what's going on. So for me, it's a tough buy.
Because if you need a high floor running back, a dude that's just going to get the football, go ahead and buy Gus Edwards for a 1-year rental, especially because you're probably going to have a contender second. You add a 3rd round pick on. I don't love it, but go ahead. If you desperately need a running back, right? Maybe your ETN just got hurt or something. I don't know. I guess it's all right. I don't love it though. That's the problem with Gus Edwards is that any move that you do for him right now, I don't love. It's safe. It's all right. He could be really good, but it seems like whenever there's a rushing quarterback involved, not named Lamar Jackson, it's like a huge detriment to a running back. But for some reason, that's a huge positive for Gus Edwards of all running backs. If Lamar Jackson was going to cannibalize anyone with his rushing output, it is Gus Edwards.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So, I think to sum up this segment, it feels like J.K. Dobbins is a firm hold. Maybe buy if you can get a discount, but like who's actually giving you a discount? Probably no one. And Gus Edwards is more of a hold to a sell. Sell if you can.
My stance was if you're a contender this year, hold. If you're rebuilding, definitely look to sell. If not now, at some point in the season, maybe wait like 3 or 4 weeks.
I am taking an early second for him.
Yeah.
If I can get an early second, yeah. If you get an early second right now, take that. I more just meant like if you're not getting like that 2nd round pick you're looking for.
All right. So moving on, we do have some other drama. It's been always, the Dolphins keep getting into rumors of they want Deshaun Watson. It was hinted here and there. They're in talks to get Deshaun Watson. A new report came out today. The Dolphins owner really wants Deshaun Watson. Yes, Frank.
You want to know what this feels like?
What?
This is like the guy and the girl in high school that were too nervous to not both of them were too nervous to actually make the move, but all their friends were like, oh, he likes, like all that crap. That's what this feels like. It's like, dude, can someone just say, okay, fine, or just flat out no? Can this whole thing just end already?
I mean, they're cutting it to the wire. Like, are you going to trade for him mid-season?
I think from the reports I've seen, they said a team. They didn't specify which team. And the reports I've seen from the Texans side, it looks like the Dolphins made an offer, but it's the Texans that are holding off on trading him because they think, I'm guessing, once the legal thing gets figured out, maybe they can get more. I don't know. I know the report also came out that Watson, at least for right now, maybe it changes in the future, wouldn't waive his no trade clause for Philadelphia. So I mentioned to Frank, I was like, who's Miami really competing against? I guess there's like Denver, Carolina, but Miami's obviously the front runners here. So it's kind of a weird situation for Watson and Tua owners. I don't know either of them currently, but I kind of feel weird about either.
Well, the part of what might be holding up the deal isn't because we don't know all the details. I know that the Eagles are definitely a team that would be more interested in trading for him next year if possible, when they actually have cap room and whatnot, so they could get Watson and then spend a ton on free agency because Watson's contract, if you trade for him, actually really isn't that bad.
Mm-hmm.
So like, not only are you competing against teams probably right now that we don't know about, I imagine there are teams that have called. You have the legal issues, and from the Texans side, okay, well, next year when teams have more cap space from no COVID stuff and hopefully assuming the legal situation is resolved, like you could cash in and have more buyers.
Yeah, that definitely could be as simple as that, where the Texans think, if we wait till next offseason, we can get a better return. Because either way, he's not playing for us this year. Because they came out and announced, or the report got public, that they plan on keeping him on the roster, but having him inactive every week. So if you're the Texans, he's not going to play for you for this season either way.
I just hate this all, man.
Yeah.
There's a limit to the amount of time that something can go on for me to be interested in it. And at this point, I'm just done. Either trade him or don't. Suspend him or don't. Just someone make a decision at some point, because this is just driving me crazy.
I don't know about you guys, but I'm sticking with my stance that he's just not playing this year. Whether it's the commissioner's list, whether it's him sitting out, I don't see Deshaun Watson on a football field this year.
I just don't think the trade's going to happen until next offseason.
You want to know? You want to know what can solve this? I know exactly what can solve this issue.
Yes, Frank.
Also, I think I'm going to write up a streak here with the amount of Harry Potter references I'm going for.
My God.
We need the Sorting Hat.
Big Harry Potter.
Where are you at? Either
the hat.
Sort him. Where is Deshaun Watson going? All right, let's move on. I hate Deshaun Watson.
Well, you gotta tell him Houston, Miami, or jail. That is the Deshaun Watson sorting hat.
That's the sort.
Very interesting. Prison.
All right. Next segment. This one kind of pains me, but not really, because I gotta go defend my guy again. Once again.
Yes.
Jamar Chase has had, I think it was 5 targets in the preseason,
and
he's dropped 4 of them. Yeah. He's got 1 catch, and I have said it so long now that it's like a broken record. Drops just don't matter. I said it about Diami Brown. I said it defending Deontay Johnson. Drops don't matter. You're not fading someone because they drop the ball. Because all of a sudden, guess what? They don't drop the ball. Like it's just something that clicks. You know, there are other reasons to not pick someone. So these drops do not worry me in the slightest. I'm still not worrying about Jamar Chase. It's like me last year where I had to go and say I'm not panicking about Jonathan Taylor. This is now me with Jamar Chase.
Yes.
We have Frank with his shade glasses on, so we'll let Frank rebut me or whatever here.
110, don't forget.
That's where you had him?
He did have him at 110. Frank did have.
Frank literally was talking to me today about he's not going to go victory lap in preseason.
Well,
this guy.
You're right, though. You're right. Like if you believed in Jamar Chase, there's no reason to panic before he's played a game. Like I don't believe in that. I don't care about preseason. This is all bait. Half the time, people are completely giving up on these players that got cut. Like, dude, if do you not see the amount of day 3 picks that switch teams to actually break out? And it'll happen like 3 seasons down the line if they ever do.
Yeah.
Like, I'm pretty sure day 3 picks have a higher chance of breaking out in year 5 than they do year 1.
Very rarely do day 3 picks break out in their rookie season. Almost never.
Well, because most of the time they're always just on special teams.
All right, let's start moving on. Let's go into the cuts.
All right, we're rolling.
Snip.
Well, yeah. All right, we'll just roll into the cuts because who cares about Chris Herndon getting traded to the Vikings?
Who cares about the fact that Jamar Chase sucks at catching the ball?
Yeah, exactly. He does not suck either. He's very good.
Yeah, you shouldn't worry about the dots. Only worry about he can't separate.
It's that Bengals atmosphere.
That Bengal, he's got to get the Bengal stink away from him.
Coaches are calling up the wrong plays.
All right. We're looking at roster cuts, and I mean, I think we'd be doing a disservice if we didn't kick it off with the big one. Cam Newton getting cut from the Patriots. Mac Jones officially named the starter. I don't think many people really predicted Mac Jones to be the day 1 starter. He definitely was a betting underdog as far as Vegas odds are considered. Most teams will go with the philosophy of you play that veteran first and then you let the rookie come in. We're going to see it with a lot of the other teams, most likely with, the Bears and the 49ers this year, probably. We've seen it before in recent years, especially because he was the 5th quarterback drafted. But Mac Jones started in week 1, right into the fire against the Dolphins, divisional game. Big game for the Patriots if they want to see themselves in the playoffs. I know I'm calling this like a must-win game, and it's friggin' week 1, but football's back. Just inject it into our veins.
Our week 1 game is going to be really interesting. Yeah. For me. I want to see how Mac Jones and Tua do against those defenses and other teams.
I know Frank said he wasn't going to victory lap preseason stuff, but you got your guy. He's starting week 1, Frank. You're the one who's been touting Mac Jones forever. He's starting week 1. How are you feeling?
Well, I wasn't right necessarily because I did think that Cam Newton was going to be the day 1 starter. I mean, I thought that Mac Jones was going to play earlier than people anticipated, but not this early. Man, it's just crazy. But I think what people are kind of underestimating is that, dude, Mac Jones, A, played insane, but B, Cam Newton sucked still. I hate to put it like that, but you saw the Cam Newton of the second half of last year when he threw for 82 yards in training camp, right? Yeah. And I don't think Cam Newton is bad. It's just he's inconsistent. And to be a quarterback in the league nowadays, you just can't be inconsistent. And then obviously Mac Jones, he's a polarizing figure. He was going to go in and play early and play well, like just learn the system, get everything down. I'm excited, dude. I think that Mac Jones, it's going to be fun to watch the Patriots now. And last but not least, this really helps Jacoby Myers for me because if you remember way back when, we actually got some shade on the Jacoby Myers takes, man. Because I was saying back then that Jacoby Myers and Deebo Samuel are the 2 year 3 receivers that really fit the profile of a 3rd-year breakout receiver, right? And Jacoby Myers, the other interesting thing was the literal thing holding him back was the offense just sucking. Because we can all agree that Jacoby Myers is not Randy Moss. He's not a Hall of Fame level talent. But
not yet.
He's good enough to be relevant in fantasy. So if you adjusted the Patriots' offensive numbers literally to just league average, he has the same stats as CeeDee Lamb. I think he has a better year than CeeDee Lamb, actually, with his target share, just putting the Patriots to an average offense. And that's still including 0 touchdowns, I'm pretty sure. Regardless, he's around the same year as CeeDee Lamb. Like, now with Mac Jones, I don't think that the Patriots offense is going to be great, but it could definitely be around average, which is exactly what you need for Myers. Myers perfectly fits what you would want at a receiver with Mac Jones. I'm excited.
Yeah, I mean, I like Jacoby Myers too. We looked into the stats of Cam last year. It was, even if you combined his rushing and passing yards per game together, or just yards on the season together, it was still lower than Daniel Jones, who was like the 20th quarterback in the league and like every other quarterback below him just like missed more than 2 or 3 games. So obviously the offense was not going to be as fancy relevant with Cam Newton. But, like Frank was saying with Lamar Jackson and stuff, this should really help Damian Harris because now you don't have that running quarterback behind there. Mm-hmm. Mac Jones is very much the opposite. You're going to see Mac Jones maybe run once a game, maybe, but more games than not, he probably will not be running. So the carries are all coming from the backfield. I think
it also opens up the box. Teams loaded the box against New England constantly when Cam was at quarterback.
So here's what's going to be interesting to see, right? Mm-hmm. Is if they keep a lot of the RPO heavy plays that Alabama ran last year with Sark, if they keep any of that RPO stuff around for Mac Jones, because he was really good at that, like money, bread and butter. And they have guys like Jonnu Smith who would be really interesting matchup hazards. Him and then Myers, a guy that's decent with the ball in his hands. Aguilar too. Interesting stuff. And also, like, JT, you're right with Damian Harris is huge because there's still going to be a run-first football team. And now this offense is going to be, let's pound the rock with Damian Harris. And you might even see multiple running backs be somewhat relevant on the Patriots. Instead of them all sucking, you could have like 2 all right ones now.
Well, all they need is a Damian Harris fumble, and then he just disappears off the face of the earth, and we're all like, "What? Why'd we invest in Damian Harris? Why'd we go out and buy Damian Harris? Because now Ramondre Stevenson's getting 10 touchdowns.
What is Ramondre Stevenson's value? Speaking of, because Ramondre Stevenson's been getting a ton of hype, and I mean, I like him. He was one of my.
Where was he? Where did he go in our rookie draft?
4th round, probably.
4th round. I'd probably
He's a typical 4th round guy.
I'd probably have him like kind of early-ish 3rd, mid-early 3rd.
Because he's getting so much hype on Twitter. I was like, okay, but who's getting more than a 3rd for him? Kind of like what you're saying. Like,
according to Keep Trade Cut, he's worth a late second. I don't know who's actually paying up that price. I guess I could see like maybe you're the ETNR, you're competing. You're throwing out that late second.
I want something on top of the second back probably right now.
I mean, yeah, you probably would. I wouldn't pay that. I mean, we've seen. I like Ramondre Stevenson too, but the rushing leaders from preseason often mean nothing to the actual NFL season. So while I like Ramondre Stevenson, a late second's a little. I'd rather go and put that late second somewhere else.
And it also has to do with the fact I really like Damian Harris. Like it doesn't
mean James White there too, dude. James White's going
to get all the receiving work. I just like Damian Harris's rusher. I think Stevenson's going to get a decent amount of touches, but like I don't think the guy in front of him's like worse than him or something.
All right, so I mean that was definitely the biggest cut, right?
Mac Jones stonks way up.
Yeah, well,
106.
Okay, actually, that's where I was going with that. Real quick, I was going on to Keep Trade Cut, right before a podcast just to check something out. I was asked would I rather Keep Trade Cut, Mac Jones. Do you guys want to take a guess at who the other 2 players I was asked about?
Kyler Murray, 2022 early first.
No, but George Kittle and DeAndre Hopkins. I was like, what? Ooh. George Kittle and DeAndre Hopkins and Mac Jones is in the same conversation already? Like,
let's see.
From today to yesterday, are we really moving Mac Jones that high up?
That's crazy, especially Kittle. I don't know what
Kittle.
Yeah, I have Mac Jones a little bit down from D-Hop, definitely.
Yeah. There's. Well, we'll get into the whole rankings and trade calculator.
Almost 20 spots.
I guess the thinking of it is like, oh, this guy can be your QB2 for like the next 12, 14 years. Like
but. These guys, like George Kittle's tight end production is
it's amazing.
Very few other
you're not
players
taking
can do that.
do not take Mac Jones over George Kittle. I think that's just a losing play.
I mean, it's definitely just a heat check on Mac Jones, but crazy. All right, so probably the next biggest player to get cut was John Brown from the Raiders. Smoke. I don't know. Like, was he really affecting that much? I guess some people saw him above.
That's why Jake
Brian Edwards.
Today.
He was afraid of John Brown.
900 yards.
Oh, he did.
Yeah,
that's
what I was saying. Me and you were like,
he's running.
Yeah, he is running from the grind. Jake, it's all right, man. Someone's got to get their takes wrong.
It just won't be us three. Little Jimmy is just on life support based on Jake's. Yeah, little Jimmy's on life support based on Jake's fantasy advice. It doesn't really affect much for me. I already thought Henry Ruggs and Bryan Edwards would be the two receivers, and then Hunter Renfrow a little bit mixed in. But obviously, this team is a team that runs through Darren Waller. Like Darren Waller's their receiving option, so
not everything has to be, John Brown, player X gets cut. That means player Y is going to be insane. I mean, this could just be that John Brown is washed. That's it.
I think that's what we're pointing to.
This doesn't – I don't think this is necessarily a huge plus for Bryan Edwards simply because, dude, show me a Gruden offense, or a recent Gruden offense especially, where we're getting, like, multiple receivers relevant. It's going to be, like, 2 guys at most. They're not going to have a ton of receivers relevant. I mean, it could be Bryan Edwards. It could be Ruggs. Fuck it. Maybe it's Renfrow. We probably know it's going to be Waller. Maybe Foster Moreau if Waller dies or something. Who knows? But I got to see it. Like, I'm not bumping Bryan Edwards' value up from this. I think that's a little
I don't think anyone was like.
I don't think anyone's value goes up. I think it's more just John Brown, whatever value he did have.
He'd be an interesting fit on the Lions. You get that veteran guy.
You want to know who'd be an interesting fit on the Lions? Anyone that runs under a 4.6 with eyes. Like, go ahead. Fair. We have a spot for you in our receiving core. Like,
all right. There were some lines like Brashard Perryman got cut, but I don't think anyone really cared about him. We do have some rookies that got cut. So it's time for me to face the music. My guy, Seth Williams, getting cut from the Broncos. But like we were saying
earlier, even good enough for their kickoff unit. How does that make you feel?
I'm going to say some very mean things to you, Lounis. I'm refraining right now, Lounis. But I feel like this doesn't change my opinion on Seth Williams at all. Like, I was not worried about him succeeding this year. Like Frank was saying earlier, day 3 guys.
Oh my God, I have to update my header. I have to make it now the tweet that Seth Williams got cut.
I hate you. I don't know. He's someone I'm still stashing on my taxi. I'm not moving Seth Williams. We're holding him. We're holding him through next year, probably. We're just going to die with Seth Williams on my roster. Probably this was something very insignificant to everyone else that's listening. But a couple other rookies that did get cut, though, that were, I guess, probably a little more surprising. Cornell Powell, who we all kind of just hated, but he was like that Chiefs wide receiver. So, obviously he's going to get a little bit of a bump from that. He got cut. Not that surprising to us. Des Fitzpatrick, who Lounis and Frank actually liked. Yeah.
Des Fitzpatrick, so that's surprising because I liked him. He's like the one dude that I feel like that I really liked that got cut.
Yeah, especially like it wasn't only that he was a 4th round pick. They traded up in the 4th round.
For those watching on the tube or the stream, live look at Cornell Powell this offseason, baby. Called it here first. Oh, buy him. He's on the Chiefs. He's bait. Huge bait.
Classic bait once again. But yeah, like Des Kirk, I'm sorry. I expect him to get picked up by someone. I'm guessing the fact that they had to trade up in the 4th round to get him means other teams valued him then. I'm not sure what happened in Tennessee with him, but I think he'll get picked up somewhere. If I owned him, I'd just still keep him on the taxi. Don't cut him yet.
I don't know. The Titans seem to really like to draft players that just do crazy crap. Maybe there's
didn't that happen with like their 1st round pick?
Yeah, that tackle out of UGA, he went crazy. Like arguably the fastest bust ever.
Yeah, that was
the dude was like a consensus bust before August. It's like, how does that happen?
It's bad.
Like literally within the month he's drafted.
Yeah.
And not like injury related or anything unfortunate. Just the guy's a nut job. That's crazy. Like, you spend a 4th round pick and he gets cut. I don't know. I'm not as confident, Lounis, in someone like Fitzpatrick, because I liked Fitzpatrick, but it's not like he was getting a ton of draft love. There was a lot of well-respected scouts saying that he was more of like a 7th round undrafted talent. Guys that have a much higher hit rate than me.
Well, his receiving room also isn't that great. Like obviously there's Julio and AJ Brown and to some extent
after the
Josh Reynolds, I guess. But
up for anyone's grabs.
So it wasn't like he had to really beat out a lot of competition. I just feel like he's definitely just a practice squad guy for
that's probably
this
what
year.
they're looking to do, is if they just, unless they just don't want him, right? You never know with some of these cuts if it's
culture
not
fit.
necessarily talent. Yeah, it's just like this guy's a fit. Oh, right now our safeties are injured, so we just need an extra safety, right? People forget that to take some of that stuff into account, which is why it's not the end of the road for these cut players. It just isn't a great sign necessarily. Last player to get cut. Everyone's the next James Robinson is not the next James Robinson, unsurprisingly. And all the UDFA running backs basically got cut.
Yeah.
My sweet Prince Jared Dokes.
My guy, Javian Hawkins, managed to get cut twice this offseason, so that was fun. Caleb Huntley, also from the Falcons.
Yeah, I didn't love the only guys I liked. I picked up Caleb Huntley in a couple of leagues just for free as a liquid roster spot, right? But no surprises necessarily that, not every year there's going to be a random undrafted breakout running back for 1,000 yards. At least not right now. Not looking like it.
No, even what's his name? Xavier Jones got cut too. The guy that like just shot up in rankings when Cam Akers went down. He got
How
cut.
about this? I'll rephrase it. It's not that there can't be a James Robinson this year, because obviously the season hasn't happened. We were unable to predict it. No one, all the running backs that people were like, oh, this guy possibly has a chance. Out.
Yeah. All right. Is that it for cuts? I guess.
Tamarion Terry got cut.
That was a while ago.
Oh, okay.
Dude had a murder charge, bro.
Real quick, ignoring Tamarion Terry, I feel like this year they were kind of more cut like draft picks than usual years, or am I bugging?
Because COVID, bro.
Yeah, they got teams.
You couldn't bring in people. It was just really hard.
Sure.
Yeah. All right. I don't know. I guess the only other thing that I'll add to this segment is there are going to be cut players that end up on different teams. I'm not going to buy into that news of, whoever ends up wherever. Like, there's going to be someone that ends up as the 3rd running back on the Falcons that people are going to hype up. There's going to be someone that
practice squad.
Yep. There's going to be someone that ends up being a backup quarterback somewhere, and you're like, oh, this is his opportunity. More times than not, more often than not, he's not going to be. Like, these are guys that I'm all fading. I'm not buying into any of this. I'm just now focused on the regular season and who's on my team. So now moving on, though, speaking of regular season, who's on my team, let's talk about the value of draft picks. We talked about the value of every positional group, but now let's break down the value of draft picks, when they're worth the most, when they're worth the least. I think you kind of get it makes common sense to most people, but to just hear it again and drill into your brain and then like to tell you kind of a strategy of like how we like to navigate picks, I think it can be really helpful. So I think this will be a good, informative, thought-provoking segment. But obviously the farther away you are from the draft, the less the draft pick's worth, right? That's just a very basic concept, that a 2024 first is worth less than a 2022 first. Even regardless of class, like, oh, there are going to be people on the Dynasty Reddit or Twitter saying, like, go out and get your 2023 first. It doesn't matter. We're talking from, like, a business concept, the time value of money, the time value of these assets. A pick today is worth more than a pick 3 years from now, because that's a player on your roster that can then grow value. So very basic concept there, right? The time that they're worth the most can be debatable. When would you guys say a draft pick is worth the most?
leading up to, or actually, I might say like right after the NFL draft, just because I think rookie fever is definitely a thing when people start like envisioning like, oh, I can get this hyped up player at this pick. Like, so say if you were trading for a draft pick in week 11 of the fantasy season versus like 3 weeks after the draft, even though it's for the same year, I think it's pretty different prices at those two standpoints. I'm not saying it should be. I'm saying that's just the reality with a lot of owners.
I think that the value is most right about nowish, like a week or two before the season starts, when you get that prime training camp preseason hype. Problem is that I've just seen it. You can trade for draft picks around draft time. Like, they're expensive, don't get me wrong, but I'll tell you this much: trading up for 107 is a whole lot easier in April than it is when Zach Wilson's sitting on the board in June or July or August. That price keeps going up, and it's even more now. If you're trying to trade for Zach Wilson now, dude, you're paying even more than you probably would have in your rookie draft, unless you have someone like me who has him valued at 102.
So to clarify what you're saying, Frank, right? A 2021 first is worth more when it's actually the player that you selected and it's about to be the regular season. So
yes.
Like 2021 107 is worth less than a Zach Wilson 1 week before the season.
Yeah, unless anything catastrophic happens, right? And I think you can play a risky game if you're trying to stonk your picks if you reach on players, you know? I think especially for first round picks, if you're not gung-ho like we are and are scouting all the players and doing all this crazy stuff, just for the first 15 picks, just picking consensus and then selling right before the season when that consensus player gets hyped, dude, that is a very viable strategy to just keep your team competitive. And obviously you miss out on the super upside if that guy completely pans out. But dude, I've been able to consistently get overpays every offseason across multiple leagues around this exact time, right? Probably a week ago was the best time to do it, but you can still do it now, where you can completely risk-free get rid of a late first, mid-first round rookie pick or an early second, get great value, instant stock. But I actually kind of wanted to talk about what the value of draft picks were in general, not just when they're most valuable. Because we can all agree, you got to let them marinate. You got to let them mature, whether it's in April, whether it's during your rookie draft, whether it's right after. Around that general time period when you can put a name, a face to the pick is when they're the most valuable. But how do we handle this compared to some of these players, right? Like, okay, well, I know that my 105 is valuable, but is it more or less valuable than Clyde Edwards-Helaire? Whoa, well, he was 102 last year. Like, especially because I don't know about you. I'm not sure if you included picks in your rankings, JT, but we're making out our overall dynasty rankings, and I'm including, okay, where would I have a random 101, 102, 103? So I guess we could start this off. Random year 102 or Clyde Edwards-Helaire?
102.
102.
I think it's 102 by a landslide. I actually think that picks in general are pretty underrated across the board. I think the most overvalued ones are the late first round picks. And this is kind of where you get boned by just going like, oh, I'll trade this guy for a first. Because if you do that and that pick is 111, 112, those are easily the most bait value picks that you can pick up. But other than that, like, I think that every single pick is usually worth, if not better, than what you pay for it, outside of clear overpays at the time.
I do agree with you about those late first kind of being overrated, because there's always a tier break between like those true first prospects to kind of end the first round, and especially how much more expensive it is paying for a late first just because it's a late first compared to like if you trade it for 202 or something.
The hit rate is essentially a second round pick.
That's what I'm saying, yeah. And and it's way cheaper to get like an early second versus a 111, 112 when a lot of times it's going to be the similar tier of players.
I'll agree to that to a point. I think if you're strictly going off consensus, right, And you're not listening to us or other people who, not to really tout ourselves that high, but like other people who have really, scouted and did the work, and you're just doing consensus. I see where the late first can be a beat, because more often than not, consensus is wrong on these late first guys. But I think if you're doing your time and you're scouting these prospects, that's how you avoid picking the likes of a Henry Rugg, sorry, Lounis, and getting the Justin Jeffersons of the world. And that's how it's too early to tell, but Travis Etienne was a prospect that was fading. Devontae Smith's prospect that was fading. Like you avoid those kind of players, and you go after someone like Frank likes, Mac Jones, and you get that guy instead. Like, obviously, it's not a foolproof method, but like I still think there's a lot of value in those late firsts. Each class almost always has good prospects in the late first, early second, but it's your job to go and find those good prospects. Like, they're not going to fall to you.
JT. I think that there is value in the late first, but I just think that compared to the value that you can get for almost any other pick in the draft, maybe not 101 when it's prime 101, because you really have to pay up for it, but every other pick I think is great value, especially the second rounders where they're not as sexy. But so I'm getting into my rankings, right? And I'm just looking at it, how there are some tough decisions to make, and this kind of puts it into perspective, right? Like what first round pick is Keenan Allen worth? Because realistically, you can argue, oh, he's probably worth a 106 or a 107. But in a super flex league, you get all these picks, and once you get to prime draft time, dude, you're not trading Keenan Allen for probably a top 9 or 10 pick in this year's draft. Maybe even more, right?
Mm-hmm.
And is that wrong? Are the draft picks too valuable there? Or do you like saying, hey, I'd rather not have Keenan Allen, and I'll take the upside?
Well, Keenan Allen's an interesting one, because I don't know where you stand on Keenan Allen, Lounis, but I feel like Frank and I are higher on. Okay, so I think we're all higher on Keenan Allen than consensus, right? Like, I think this guy is just not like the most guaranteed to be a wide receiver one, but I feel pretty confident about Keenan Allen.
He's one of the guys we're assuming he's healthy for most of the year. I'm most confident in being a wide receiver one.
Yeah. So my thing is, what am I paying for Keenan Allen? Like, what pick am I paying for Keenan Allen? And
a random 106.
It gets tough. I like Keenan Allen. If you could just budge a little bit with me here, Frank, and give me like a 107, I'll pay the 107 and take Keenan Allen. I don't know. 106 is kind of my line break.
I'm close to JT. I'm between 107, 108. I definitely think it's more than the 110 range, but that's tough, because 106, you can still get like one of those young QBs. And then it's like the question of how do guys like Fields and Mac Jones right now value-wise compared to Keenan Allen?
Well, even then, you could probably get the top or second top wide receiver in that class too.
Yeah.
If you're going wide receiver, you could get if you're in a super flex league, there's always likely to be 2 or 3 quarterbacks that are going that high. There's probably 2 running backs that go that high. There probably won't be another Kyle Pitts for a while, and not at least the next year. So you're probably looking at maybe 1 wide receiver has gone before you're picking, maybe 2 if they're like some elite prospects, but like I don't really know. I think 2023 is more when we get the elite prospect kind of wide receivers potentially. So it is Keenan Allen versus top wide receiver of this rookie class, and it's who you take it.
Well, here's the other factor, and this might swing it in the fact in towards the draft picks, right? Is that for a draft pick to maintain or increase in value, when it's not a player, well, they basically automatically increase in value. So it's an extremely safe investment. And like I said, the only way that you get boned really is if the guy that you trade becomes insane and then you're stuck with a late first round pick. But it's still not the end of the world, right? Like, we've had a lot of trades in our league, for example, where one of our league mates traded Keenan Allen for a single first, and that first ended up being 111. But then all of a sudden, the draft, he comes out, takes DeAndre Swift, and then trades DeAndre Swift for 2 firsts, and then all of a sudden you're back, or you could just keep DeAndre Swift, right? Like, even when you lose a trade, you don't lose the trade. You can still recuperate if you get the pick. It's just so safe. And then the other thing is that when you take these players, I've noticed when you pick a rookie, they need like 4 good games. You give me 4 good games and you can increase in value.
No, it's literally just pretty much just don't completely shit the bed.
Yeah, like, don't you don't even have to have a good look season. Like ass, and give me 4 games where you just pop and then bang, you increase a first round pick worth of value. For Keenan Allen to be worth the same, dude needs to be a wide receiver 1, basically, or a high end wide receiver 2.
That's very true.
I mean, look at.
I mean, this won't help you win. Like, I'd rather have the fantasy points if I'm a competitor, but
yeah, like even just look at Akers pre-injury. He was not getting any playing time for the majority of the season until like the last maybe third of the year, last fourth of the year. He became a starter, had 5 or 6 good games, and his value like quintupled. Like it skyrocketed. Yeah. It became even like was deserving because I thought he was talented. But I'm just saying, like, if you just have those stretch of games, it doesn't need to be a good entire rookie year.
Even a better, not better, but like a similar example would be the likes of AJ Dillon, where it's like he literally didn't play. He played 1 game against the Titans, ran all over the Titans in a snow game against bad defense, and he's a top 28 running back, and he's just a backup. Like, he is not the starting running back. He's not going to be for the next year, probably 2 years at least, and he's a top 28 running back, and he's had 1 game. So
here's the other thing I want to touch on with the value of draft picks. I actually forgot about this. Because you mentioned it earlier, JT, and that's how people discount draft picks from future years because of the time value of draft picks based off of in finance or business, the time value of money, right? Money now is worth more because you can use that to make more money before the money in the future, right? That's the whole theory behind it.
Mm-hmm.
I actually don't think that applies as much to draft picks, really only if you don't know if your league is going to go on in the future. Like, if you're in a league with a bunch of random people and you're kind of just taking it a year or 2 at a time and you don't know 5 years down the road if this is going to be a league or not, okay, yeah, then my discount rate on later end draft picks, super high. Like, yeah, I don't give a crap about a 2027 first. I'm probably not going to be in here, or I have no idea if I'm going to be in here, right? If you're in a league, at least like, and this is probably with most home leagues, like our league, dude, I know this thing's going to be going on basically as long as fantasy football goes on.
Yeah.
Right. And we're all alive, right? Like, we're going to be playing and we're going to be out here. I will take your discount on future picks gladly, dude. And especially for like second round picks, right? I can pick up so many seconds and thirds for cheap on good players if there's a guy that just doesn't care about his future picks. And especially in new dynasty leagues, there's always one dude who's like, this guy's worth a second. Yeah, I'll give you a second and a third, but a third in 2024. You know, it's like, fine, man, add them all up. Give it to me. Because those picks add up and become pretty valuable, much more valuable than you think at the time. And that's one of the other reasons why I think the draft picks are super overrated or super underrated, is because everyone puts too much of a discount on them. They're still very liquid. Even when they're a year out, I could trade a 2023 second pretty easily. And to me, it's an asset that's almost guaranteed to increase in value unless the dude's team is a champ in the championship. It's really the only scenario. And even then, you're still not screwed.
Yeah. And kind of going to the point you started with, a lot of the draft advice we're giving with like future years, picks, everything, this is assuming your league is going on. If you don't think, if you're in a league with a bunch of randoms, like 80% of it's inactive and you don't think it's going to last more than 2 years or whatever, you kind of move different. Like this has to be all leagues where like you honestly think it's going to keep going, and it's like the commissioner, if someone's trading like a future pick, they have to pay for that year or something, whatever the method may be. Yeah, go ahead, JT.
Not to get on like a side tangent too far, but like I think really where most of your trust on how far a league should be is like you really got to know your league bylaws and who your commissioner is, because like we're in an orphan league, Frank and I. Like we just started a league earlier this offseason, and they do have those strong rules where it's like if you're trading picks 2 years from now, like you're paying your buy-in for 2 years from now. Yeah. So that really ties people to the team, or if someone's going to quit that team, another person can step in for free. So again, not everything's these are people you're playing with online. These are random people that you likely don't know in person. So you still have to be wary about trading for a 2024 first or whatnot. But leagues where I feel better about the commissioners than others, like I'm feeling better about the draft picks. All right, Frank, what else do we want to talk about with the draft picks?
I mean, this kind of goes hand in hand with a lot of what we're saying, but I know the productive struggle is becoming a much more popular strategy. I know DF Bean Counter, follow him on Twitter. We love you, Bean Counter. I know he's a big fan of the productive struggle. And I mean, I agree with him. Like if I'm in a high stakes league that I'm looking, and I know that this league is with some professional people, right? And is going to be going on for a good 5 years. Why not go for a strategy that's pretty damn safe? And like when push comes to shove, you don't have to take a player. 90% of the time, you can trade the draft pick before or during the draft, right? If you're really shopping it around. And then even if you don't, like you can trade the guy if in rookie camp, if he's getting any sort of hype. You saw it this year. Basically, every rookie in existence got some sort of rookie hype.
Not
except
Najee
for
Harris.
Kadarius Toney. That's the only one.
But we could have told you about Kadarius Toney.
Not low period.
Sorry, Lounis. I had to throw that in there. And
put Lounis on mute right
Actually,
now.
No, Kyle Trask did get hype in OTAs.
Trask got a good camp.
Just to put it in perspective, right? Think about the likes of Najee Harris, right? Najee Harris in a super flex league was, I don't know, 104. What would you guys say? What was Najee Harris?
Somewhere between 103 to 105, 106 for most of the process.
Yeah.
He slowly climbed, but the running backs always do as we get closer
the
to
RB1
the season.
Always does.
Especially with the redraft crew kicking in, and then the running back hype gets crazy.
Okay. So with the likes of Najee Harris, let's say you're drafting, I don't know, a month and a half after the draft, right? You're in June and you draft Najee Harris. The Najee Harris that you drafted in June is now worth an extra second round pick on top to get Najee Harris today.
Exactly, dude.
And it's an early second round pick too. It's like pick 203. That's about how much he's gained in value. He's gained an early second round value. And all he did was run for 3 yards each carry for 6 carries in preseason. He hurdled like one guy. That's it. That's all we've seen from Najee Harris. There's nothing that makes me feel better about Najee Harris today than 4 months ago. And he's gained an early second round pick worth of value, which is crazy to me. But
how much? I'm just wondering because this is going to be actually funny. So this is a player who didn't play a single preseason game.
Okay.
Only practice. Elijah Moore's value.
Oh, Elijah Moore, Lounis.
You could have sold him for a first in some leagues at his height. You 100% could have.
And he didn't play a single preseason game.
So
this is all just stuff.
But this is why now camp hype after the draft is such an underrated time to sell rookies and young players. Everyone's too busy victory lapping over things that they shouldn't be victory lapping, myself included probably. But I'm the dude who actually sells the play. I will sell players that I like. Not players that I love, but I will sell players that I like for instant stonkage. And then all of a sudden next year, the same things happen. And then it's like, dude, it snowballs. And I've got so many draft picks after a couple seasons.
Yeah.
Stonks. We are stonks professionals. All right, let's move on.
All right.
Unless you guys have anything else you want to cover on draft picks?
My whole thing though is the number one thing about draft picks, the best thing about draft picks are they're the most liquid, right? Like, people might have different opinions on how strong the draft classes are and whatnot, but for the most part, everyone feels similarly about draft picks. No one really minds having draft picks on their team because the draft pick could literally be anything. The draft pick could be whoever you want to be. So I do like acquiring draft picks, but then I'm not afraid to then move said draft picks because I don't mind selling a player rather than, I don't know, I'll just pick two players out of the hat. But like Marquez Callaway and Jacoby Myers, two players I have in their home league. It's just something easy, right? Say I had Marquez Callaway and I wanted to trade into Jacoby Myers. Well, turns out the guy who wants or has Jacoby Myers doesn't like Marquez Callaway. These two guys, I looked at them at Keep Trade Cut, as of recording this, they're
similar.
They're maybe two spots apart from each other. Yeah, right? This guy doesn't like Marquez Callaway. Well, I find another guy who wants Marquez Callaway for an early second round pick, mid second round pick. Kind of, I don't know. I've seen him go for a late first. I've seen him go for like a third. He's all over the place. But let's just say Marquez Callaway, I know if I shop him around, I'm going to find someone who's going to give me like a mid second for Marquez Callaway. Now it's much easier to convince the Jacoby Myers owner to give him to me for a mid-second round pick. We got clowned for saying that you should wait till I sell Jacoby Myers for a second round pick.
Yeah, and that was like for a late second. Like
yeah. So it's easier to move into guys if you just have those picks. So I'm not advising to always do this because you could, if you start planning too many moves out, like you're depending on too many different dominoes to fall, but to just make it one extra transaction to get the transaction that you want done, I'm all for it. It's so much easier than, okay, I'll give you Marquez Callaway in 2/3 and then you give me blah blah. Like it's easier that way. That's all I had to add. But
okay, to recap.
Yep.
Draft picks are underrated. Most of them, basically all of them, I think are underrated. So kind of try to err on the side of draft picks. It's not always, people, you can give up draft picks in an overpay. We said on our trade strategies, like look to upgrade draft capital when it's cheap. If you get an offer and you want to make a trade a little more even to accept, dude, offer a little pick swap a year or two down the line. Can't hurt, right? Can only help. And I also think that like late round picks are kind of underrated, but they require a little bit more thought than people realize, at least to me. Because you can't draft consensus late round. It's not a proven strategy that works.
I'll say I think thirds might be a little underrated. I once you get into the fourths, there's not many players I like in the fourth
round. Thirds are definitely underrated.
Yeah, thirds are so easy.
On the class too, though, because like this year I did not like a lot of the later round picks, but the past couple years there have been some guys that I really like.
Chase Claypool,
Darnell Mooney, there's a ton every year.
Yeah, remember when I picked up James Robinson in 2 leagues last year and then traded him for a third before the season started, trying to stonk? Sometimes stonking bites you in the ass.
Yeah, but I'd rather be right. For the one unicorn, there's 20 other guys that aren't.
I still have a share of him in another league. Wow. Speaking of which, what a freaking roller coaster owning James Robinson is, man.
Oh yeah.
One week he's worth 8 firsts, the next week he's not worth a fab.
I saw him. I did a startup draft this offseason after the draft, and he just went so late. And then now he's starting this year. We will see how he does, and then it's going to be even more of a mess next year once Etienne's back. Everyone's like, how the fuck do we value these guys?
This is kind of relevant, though, this exact conversation. For moving into our next topic, I'm taking your role here, JT.
I know. I like the segue.
We lost Lounis. Lounis, we lost you, man. All right,
I'm still here.
Lounis, leave and join the call back, and I'll get you on here, but I wanted to have a discussion on depth versus studs, because I have a league right now where we started off kind of rough. Actually, we got Lappy in the chat. He's the guy that I do it with. We started off kind of rough. Like our team was fine, but we finished 4th to last, and then we made a move for Dalvin Cook. picked up a stud at running back, and then all of a sudden we made and lost the championship in that league. And it was, dude, one stud, right? We traded away our draft, a couple draft picks, Marquise Brown when he had some hype, pick up one stud. It turned us from average to championship level. We should have won the championship for that, but I digress. GT, I know you like studs. My trade calculator, that spoiler that we're making, loves studs. Like, what is the line, though, between stud and then depth?
I'm always willing to push the limit for studs, for the top players that I think are top tier players at their position. I'm always willing to overpay because I just think if I'm giving up the depth, I can always find depth. That's always been from the start of this podcast. I've said I can always find depth, and this is going to be a little bit of a pat on the back moment kind of thing. But Frank just did with Dalvin Cook, so I'll do it. And this is how I like. You got to take risks, right? So I gave up Kirk Cousins, OBJ, Joe Mixon, and 2021 first in August of 2020 to get Patrick Mahomes. So it was Kirk Cousins, at the time was considered borderline, QB2, but early QB2, a top tier.
Yeah, high-end QB2.
Yeah. OBJ, who was wide receiver 2, early wide receiver 2. Joe Mixon, who was a running back 1, but like a mid to late running back 1, and 2021 first, which was likely going to be middle of the road. So a lot of big assets for Patrick Mahomes, right? Now, today, you're probably going, I would easily do that. Well, I put that trade into Reddit, and I was like, oh, what do you guys think? I got smoked for doing that trade. And you're like, you gave up so much. Like it was, they have the trade analyzer poll on Reddit, like where you put in like your details and stuff. It was like, magnitudes of this, but it was like 6-1 saying that I lost the trade. It was like, 40 something to 10 that they wanted the side of OBJ, Kirk Cousins, Joe Mixon in the 2021 first. Today, I would never do that trade back. Like, you would have to add so much on top of it because, these are, while not bad players, these were middle of the road, solid roster guys. But they just weren't the studs. They're not the guys. Now, obviously, if I was a competing team, which I wasn't at the time, I would have to think twice about doing this kind of move. But for me, just getting the studs is what you got to do. Lappy says he's just a humble viewer, but doesn't agree with that at all. You can find depth anywhere.
I agree, because now finding the studs and then not, because you can trade for a guy you think is a stud and then all of a sudden he sucks and then shaboom, the whole operation is blown up. So finding the studs is difficult in and of itself. That's why we personally like to invest in stud quarterbacks in our Superflex leagues, even though they command the super high price and their value went up crazy this offseason. They're just safer investments, right? If they pan out, they pan out for longer. You can make the argument receivers too, even though they're not as much different discussion, right? But if you are able to get your stud, right, the guy that you think is an absolute beast, right? I was in a league last year where a guy took DK Metcalf end of the second round of a startup, and everyone is like, oh, that is a reach by like a round. But this year, even if DK Metcalf is at that pick value, getting his guy, getting the stud is what is the kind of moves that puts you in the playoffs, right? And that really maximizes the value of your team. Because like JT said, you can find depth and you can acquire depth, especially if you don't blow up your operation with giving up every draft pick you have. You could trade for depth like that if you have a full draft class.
Just think about this. Like if you were scouring the waiver wire, like obviously this takes a little bit of good roster management, but if you're listening to podcasts like this, I have to assume you're somewhat involved in the Dynasty
in touch
community.
with everything.
Yeah, you're somewhat listening, right? So you pick up Marquez Callaway, you pick up the likes of a Gus Edwards off the waiver wire, you pick them up for cheap. Like they're guys that you could flip, the Tyrod Taylors of the world, Quez Watkins, and you just go and you flip those guys for picks. You're immediately just starting to flip your value right back into Now it's not the paper clip into a house kind of moves, but like you are building your depth back by just getting it off waiver wires.
Yeah, every year there's some at every single position. We saw within even just like last season, like Gaskin, we saw Logan Thomas and Tanyan. There's a bunch every single season. So I'm with JT in terms of it's easier to build depth than you probably think. Well, I can't assume for every viewer, but then what a lot of people think, I should say.
Well, so the other part of the discussion that I kind of wanted to mention is that I see a lot of trades and you can make these trades and keep trade cut and whatnot, where you have just standard asset A is, let's say, worth 6,000, and then you have two, let's say, even 3,200 assets, right? That is their value, and you'll say, okay, that's a pretty even trade. Maybe side A wins by a little bit. I think side A wins by a lot more than is currently valued right now. But it's also tough because I have had so much success in like rounds 4, rounds 5, round 6 of my startup drafts at the same time. So like the other part of it is, where is the cutoff between who's a stud and who's not a stud? Because that's the other part of the equation, right? You can say, oh, we'll go trade for studs. Well, everyone immediately thinks, Davante Adams. I'm getting him, baby. 9 firsts. Here we go. Freaking this, that. And all of a sudden, you trade your entire roster for Davante Adams or for an A.J. Brown, or for me, one year, Todd Gurley, and all of a sudden, kaboom, right? I also think that the level of stud is a little bit misconstrued, because I consider Javonte a stud, and you can pick him up in the 4th round of a lot of leagues. Maybe not now because of how many running backs got hurt, but Ayuk, right? Or whoever.
Yeah, I was going to say that's where it comes into a big part of fantasy, is also just being able to watch and evaluate players. Because I agree with you. It's tough to kind of tell the blurred lines of where's like the line in the sand for a stud. Because someone who's not going maybe the first 3 rounds of a rookie draft, but someone like a DJ Moore, who I think is a stud and who I think is going to be a good receiver for a long ass time. Like that's someone who's going a little bit later, and some people may not consider him that. So it comes down to kind of just you individually, one, just being in touch with how the Dynasty community is viewing everyone, but also just watching on your own and being able to like evaluate some of these players and how you think their success is going to be long term.
Yeah, but that's tough to do, though, to just like watch and be like, okay, well, he's worth this.
I mean, it's not going to work out every time, but there has to be some level of evaluation ability for players who are already in the NFL, kind of just judging them.
I do have like a set criteria I think I look at to determine stud, right? Where Javonte would fit my criteria if I'll lay it out for you guys, right? Any young elite quarterback, stud. I'm willing to trade for them. You know, from Patrick Mahomes all the way down to Joe Burrow. I mean, we haven't seen it with Justin Fields, Trey Lance, Trevor Lawrence, those guys yet. But, you know, if you feel really good about one of them, maybe those guys I'm not yet willing to do it for. But other than the rookies, those young stud quarterbacks, I'll go out and get if I can, which in a lot of leagues it's hard, right? Then running backs, it gets a little interesting, right? If they're 24 and older, unless their name's Christian McCaffrey, I'm probably shying away from them, right? Like the Dalvin Cooks of the world right now, Frank, who, you know, 2 years ago was fine. Now I'm like, Derrick Henry is a stud by all accounts, but like I'm not willing to sell the farm for these guys. A Javonte Williams, though, yes. Now, Najee Harris is someone I don't like. Not a great prospect. Also is 23 and a rookie. Not going to call him a stud. Wide receivers, though, the Davante Adams of the world, again, probably not. I just think this is his highest value, and it's only down from here. Tyreek Hill, same thing. But the likes of an Ayuk, a T. Higgins, even a Chase Claypool, those are guys I'll call studs. I'll go out and get them. DK Metcalf. A.J. Brown's a little bit of an interesting one. I think he's kind of at his peak value. Justin Jefferson, I'll go out and get those kind of guys. Those are the studs. And then after that, I think it's just Kyle Pitts for tight end, right? Those are the clear bucket of studs where I will overpay so much to go and get those guys to the point of where I don't really have a whole lot of assets right now in our home league to go trade and get those guys. But I'd give up multiple firsts. I'd give up, solid prospects and stuff to get those guys, because I think these guys are the ones of the future. They're prospects that they've shown already good, fantasy production. They're young guys who I feel confident will be at the top of their game for 3 to 4 years, where in 3 to 4 years, assuming the league is still around, I'll have more draft picks. Those are coming every year. You're getting a draft pick every year. And, so if it goes wrong, yeah, it sucks. But those are guys that I trusted in. Those are guys that I believe in. Those are guys that are going to go out and they're going to be the wide receiver ones, the quarterback ones of the future that are going to win me the championships. You don't win championships with a team of running back twos and wide receiver twos and quarterback twos. Those don't win you championships. Difference between running back 1 overall to running back 8 overall is insane. You just got to go out and you got to get those top tier guys. Because if you don't have those competitive advantages, you're not winning championships, and you're just a middle of the pack guy, and that's all you'll ever be. Maybe you make the playoffs some years, maybe you don't, but at the end of the day, you're just breaking even, and you're just there to hang out, I guess. You don't get any rings to show for it.
Well, that's funny because, I've done a little bit of both, where I have drafts where I try to go for more studs, and I have drafts where I go out and leagues, or I guess where I go for depth. And I've had success doing both, which is kind of why I wanted to have the debate of where the line of stud is, because I think in that league where I went for more depth, that is one of the things that helped me out, is that the line of who a stud is, or what a stud is somewhat misconstrued, right? Because Adam Thielen isn't considered a stud. And even at his prime, he probably was never considered a stud according to any model, because he doesn't have the draft capital. He doesn't have that insane elite wide receiver 1 physical talent. But you look at his numbers, and the guy has been a stud from a complete fantasy perspective, right? The guy's been a beast. He has the record for most 100-yard games in a row. So, I don't know. I think that both are viable, but I will always err on the side of stud, at least in my rankings. But I really kind of want to get, for people listening, I've been starting to do this more. There's a line in the sand, man. There's a line, and you got to make it clear between guys that you are willing to overpay for. Like JT kind of had his list, right? You just go through. You got to have guys that you're willing to overpay for, and guys that you're saying, I'm only gonna buy at a good value, right? My personal whatever good value it is. I'm not gonna overpay for them. And if you do that, even if you have bad moves, you kind of have a more clear plan of which guys you want, which guys you have as studs, and who are not. So let's kind of get into how would you determine that someone is a stud? I think the first one is it's almost okay, draft capital and early production, right? If you have a guy that's a first round pick and looks like a beast, it's okay, you kind of put 2 and 2 together. If Saquon Barkley's pick 5 or pick 2 or whatever and starts playing well, it doesn't take a rocket surgeon to figure out that this guy's going to be good. Yeah, you like that?
I like that.
But do you guys have any other kind of, do you just look at the stats? If a guy is statistically good, you deem him a stud? Do you have any kind of telltale signs, telltale strategies for who is the stud and who's not?
Statistical success does play a big part in it, obviously, as you mentioned, someone who's having those successful seasons early on in those career. But I'm also looking at how they're playing, how some of these stats came, how some of because if you look at say someone caught an 80-yard touchdown and you go watch the video, one was just a complete blown coverage and they're open by 20 yards versus one was he ran a filthy double move on the corner and just created separation. How those stats accumulate will kind of matter to me, as well as the situation they're accumulated in, because you also got to consider guys who maybe he didn't put up as good of a season as someone else, but I still like him more because his, say, as a running back, his O-line was shit and it wasn't really a good offense. But I expect it to be better the next year, or like a receiver that had bad quarterback play that year. So that's what I meant earlier when I said like the watching them aspect and being able to like evaluate both the situation and how they look on the field on your own. Because I mean, that's the reason we watch like a lot of these games that aren't like our favorite teams, besides just the general like love for football. Like in some of these preseason games, like you don't want to just look at the box score for every single time at the very end. Like you want to see how they're doing it, who they're doing it against, how they are looking with like the teammates besides them, how they're making their plays. So I think all of that factors in. I know it's kind of a general answer, but like that is kind of the reality of how I view it.
I think to make it so for quarterbacks, I think it's very simple, right? I have this clear, and it's going to be difficult for everyone, right? But I have this clear-cut vision in my head where can I see this quarterback winning the Super Bowl, right? Because quarterbacks, those are the lifeblood of the team. The championship is all that matters, right? If coaches and front office guys don't think this guy is going to win them a Super Bowl, he's not going to be on the team in 3 years. Because I listened to Mike Tannenbaum, former Jets GM, on Part of My Take, and he was talking about they had Chad Pennington. They really liked Chad Pennington. He was a solid player, but they always thought, can he beat Tom Brady? And they were like, no, he can't beat Tom Brady. He's not winning us a Super Bowl. So can I see this guy winning a Super Bowl? So obviously the likes of Patrick Mahomes, yes. Josh Allen, yes. Even the likes of Dak, I can see. I could go down the list. Justin Herbert, sure. Kyler Murray, sure. Lamar Jackson, sure. But then you get into the likes of Tua, or you talk about I'm trying to think of, the rookie quarterbacks. It's hard to judge because they're rookies, but like Baker Mayfield, can I see him winning a Super Bowl? I don't know. Like guys like this, that's where I draw my line. Ryan Tannehill, I have question marks, so I'm not going to put him above my stud line, right? So I think it's kind of a caveman way of looking at it, but I think it's a very easy way for you yourselves of, do you think this guy's winning a Super Bowl? No, then he's not your stud. Then running backs, wide receivers, it is much more just production based, right? Like wide receivers, you want to see a good target share, right? Because there's been so many studies that say talent leads to targets, right? If you're a good wide receiver, you're going to get the more targets on your team. You're going to lead your team in targets. Running backs, Frank, you like the can you break tackles? I like can you catch the ball? I like running backs that can catch the ball. I think you're all kind of on the same page with me in that regard too, right?
But it's just funny that you said that because I didn't like Montgomery or Penny, and everyone's always like, oh, they're the tackle breakers.
You like Montgomery
tackle
now,
breakers. I like him now at his price, yeah. But at his time, I remember he was consensus 1 or 2 at one point. I'm like, dude, that is a yikes.
Yeah. Well, forced missed tackles. You like forced missed tackles.
I kind of get in. Sorry to cut you off here, JT, but like, I wanted to hear your guys' thoughts because I'm a very much a film dude, right? Like I will go through every prospect in existence and watch every game tape that I can watch on YouTube. Shout out KillPro88, by the way, one of the YouTube channels. I'll be looking for angles. I'll be deep diving. I'll be looking Wikipedia histories, all these high school sports stuff. But dude, no one else is on crack, or at least maybe there's only a handful of people that are going that crazy. So to me, it's like, okay, well, I have my film evaluation of these guys, and I can go back on my notes and look at all of them, so I can kind of see where I thought their ceiling was, and then kind of off of that gauge, okay, well, did I completely miss or completely misjudge how they'd be used? Like Antonio Gibson, right? Antonio Gibson, to me, I misjudged how they'd use him. I didn't think he'd be swapped into a running back, gain a bunch of weight, and all of a sudden be an RB1. It's like, okay, well, I can just kind of change that, right? Fine.
But the ability to pivot that, though, and you raise your hand up and say, okay, I was wrong. I missed on that. I like Antonio Gibson. Let me go out and try and get Antonio Gibson. That's huge. Not getting stuck in your, past priors. Because
I think it's a balance. Well, for me, how I look at it is, has this player changed from what he was and what I thought he could be, right? Because like that's Pro Football Focus's thing is, they look at players and assume that they're basically going to be the same player they were in college. which I mean works like a decent amount of the time. I mean, players are who they are, but they do change, right? So you're not going to hit on a whole lot of Antonio Gibsons if you say, oh, well, they'll never be able to. You just kind of have to look at it on a case-by-case basis for me, right? That's why I didn't like Denzel Mims. I thought watching like way too many Jets games back on the All-22 for the Sam Darnold analysis, I'm looking at Denzel Mims and I'm saying to myself, okay, they drafted him to replace Brashad Perryman. They wanted Brashad Perryman to come in there and stretch the field vertically. That's what Mims did at Baylor. And this dude is unable to stretch the field vertically, I thought. I did not like it at all. Some may look at it and be like, oh, well, he just is in a different role. That's why his ADOT and all that bullshit is down. I don't even know if it was, right? But I'm looking at 12 games of All-22. I could just be like, yeah, I don't like that. Demerit, I didn't like him to begin with. Never liking him now. But like, if you're not going to do that, how do you determine this kind of stuff?
Well, it is interesting what you're saying there, where this is like his third mention on this pod, but Bean Counter did talk about face planners, which I don't exactly love the methodology and process behind it, but the idea is that if a player from, I think he does May to May, a rookie loses 12 spots ADP from May of the year they were drafted to May after their rookie year, they're considered what's called a face planter. And he said to sell those face planters because they are likely never going to produce, or if they do produce, it won't be for years down the road, and you're not going to get your values worth, right? I agree to that to an extent. Denzel Mims would be one of those guys. He's considered a face planter right now. He's someone that I would sell. I would have sold. I put out tweets about Denzel Mims months ago saying people are giving excuses for him and the Adam Gase offense.
Bro, we hated Denzel.
Yeah, we were not big on Denzel Mims. Sell now. And you could have sold for a second pretty easily, an early second. Now you can't. Now he's not even on the first team. He's losing snaps to all these other players. Now you're lucky if you get a third round pick for Denzel Mims.
Yeah.
There are players, though, that I'm willing to be more lenient on, which goes against the face planter idea and kind of is against the process.
It's a fine line, dude.
Yeah. Because here's the thing, right? The process works for a reason, right? Because if you fade all of those guys, you're going to be right more times than you're going to be wrong. It's just it's the science.
If you only use that strategy once or twice and you miss.
Yeah,
I mean, that's how I operated in our league to a certain extent, and I missed out on two guys that could have got me championships. I sold Derrick Henry before I should have, which really hurts because the dude almost broke the rushing record, and I sold James Robinson before he played a snap because I picked him up in the draft. I mean, I thought he was a nice little dart throw, but all of a sudden, right before week one, I'm seeing a juicer of a third-round pick for James Robinson. I'm like, okay, instant stocks. I still have a share of him, all that bull crap. By the way, the whole like, oh, I need to get a share or I think that has burnt me so many times. I'm never doing that again, where it's like, oh, I'm going to take a guy that I don't like as much because I need to have a share of him in a league. Fuck that noise. I got burnt on that too many times. I'm not doing that again. But like JT and Lounis are right in that you can go ahead and keep selling face planters, for any sort of value, right? You keep selling them for late seconds or mid seconds and third round picks. But when you have one of those Derrick Henrys and James Robinsons, I had two of them. Dude, that stings. And that is a championship level sting possibly.
Yeah, but it's just the math says you're going to be wrong more times than you're going to be right if you hold on to these face planters. And, you can turn those seconds that you get for them. It's like a reroll. You get you get another shot. It's a free ticket. Obviously, it's a year later, and you got to wait for it. But it's that free ticket of, okay, I missed on this guy, but I have another second. Let me try and hit on this guy. And hitting on guys in the rookie draft are way more valuable than, even if your face planner hits. Because, like, Justin Jefferson was a second-round pick. T. Higgins was a second-round pick. Look at where they're worth now. That's, I don't know.
Yeah.
If talking second round picks, it's probably like 6 second round picks.
Yeah, late first, early second, which you can trade for no matter what.
And another thing with the face paint idea, because I do think a lot of times it works. Do not. My main thing is listen to the emphasis on May to May. Do not sell a rookie who's been disappointing through 10, 11 weeks.
Yes.
That I've seen so many people get fucked by that.
That's how you end up with Jonathan Taylor and Cam Akers off your team.
Yeah,
you do got to be more patient than a lot of the community is.
You got to at least, at the minimum, give them their entire rookie season. Like, I don't care if they do nothing weeks 1 through 8 and you're expecting them to be like really good right away. You have to give them the entire rookie season because there's so many studs that like they just don't play all the time. I remember the same thing happened in our league with when I traded for Miles Sanders a couple years ago. When he was the backup for the majority of the year, then he started the last 4 weeks. By the end of the season, his value was like 2 or 3 times the amount of when I traded when he was like still kind of like the backup. So that's if you're going to take the strategy, that like good, because most of the time it does work, even though Frank Wild pointed the times where it doesn't and it sucks. But you can't do that week like 10 or 11.
All right. So to recap a little bit, I think you really got to draw a line on where studs are, make those tier breaks if you got a startup draft or if you're looking to try and trade for someone at a position, right? You have to know how you value the players and who you're looking to get and who you are, what basket are you willing to put the eggs in to make that move and get that player, and vice versa, right? You got to have a price and a realization to where you can give up on a guy for a specific price, even if you like him. Kind of tying back to the selling rookie segment, right? I've made a lot of good deals by saying I like this rookie that I just picked, but I'm getting a price that is just too good. It's too safe for me to pass up on. It's instant value, bang. And I also think that whether you kind of go for studs and then fill in the depth after, or you try to go for that high quality depth where you get multiple studs for a single stud, like I think both of those strategies can work. So I wouldn't necessarily pigeonhole myself into one. It's just a case by case basis. Do you think the draft is a little deeper? Do you think the rookie class is a little deeper? Go ahead and trade down. It's just every single time I'm going to err on the side of stud unless I really like the depth there, right? Unless I really like the depth of the class.
All right. I think that sums up our episode then, right?
Yep. Next week, right. The season primer episode.
Yep.
Go ahead, JT.
Season 2, episode 4 in the books. Season 2, episode 5 will be our primer. We'll break down everything. We still do need 2 or 3 more listeners to, reach out to us, join our Dynasty League football team. You got to lose to myself, and you got to beat Frank and Lounis and Jake to steal Frank's line, except switch it to me. Comment on us, our videos, if you disagree with us. I know there's a lot of other, different strategies. I like to hear different perspectives. Rate, review, subscribe. Yes, Frank?
Also, website just got redesigned. We should have rankings and articles coming up now. So if you're interested in more article kind of content and
I'm taking on Fabiano
rankings, we're gonna try and update the rankings like constant time. So just keep a lookout for stuff. We're gonna be releasing some more stuff on the website outside of that as well. So just kind of stay tuned on that front.
All right. I think that's it. Season 2, episode 4 in the books. Thank you, everyone.